Welcome to How Will Mixed Reality Replace Smartphones? Going Deep with the Hololens. Please welcome your speaker, Philippe Lewicki.
Hi, everyone. Very excited to be here. A lot of very familiar faces. It's nice to talk at Los Angeles, VRLA. So it's my first talk here in virtual reality Los Angeles. And I want to talk to you about mixed reality. So a little bit about me and the company. We're HTML Fusion. We build products, and we work with entrepreneurs that have really good ideas. And then we execute on their product. This is some of our product we've built. And the one that's interesting here is HoloUI. It's our research on holographic user interfaces. So now let me talk about breakthroughs and big changes. So they happen usually when technology intersects. Okay? So I want to get you to where I want to get you is what is mixed reality and how it's going to impact our life and some use cases. So before I want to go there, I want to talk to you about how things are happening now and how it relates to what was happening in 2007. So in 2007, we had something I call the convergence. We have cellular network that were getting data, and we had user interface design that was getting really, really good, and we had capacitive touchscreens. So all those three technology existed before, but at one point they become much better to a point that they could reach consumer, and you had to it the genius of Steve Jobs, and you get something like the iPhone. The iPhone could not exist without that convergence of technology, without all of those three technologies suddenly intersecting and creating that fabulous device. That takes us up to today, where we have a new convergence, and that convergence can finally replace that Mac and that phone that you have. Let's get into that one. So this convergence is artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and augmented reality. So I'm going to go a little bit in detail of each of those, because all of those matters to create that next big thing, that next device, that next thing that's going to actually replace the phone and do everything we do today without the phones and the computer. So the Internet of Things basically is the Internet coming out of the cloud and the server rooms and your computer and your telephone into the real life. You'll find now the Internet of Things into your watches, your lights, your thermostat, your speaker, if you have Alexa, for example, the Echo, the Nest for the thermostat, your doors, you can now connect your doors to the Internet and open them, your car. All those devices now are actually connected to the Internet. So the Internet is not staying behind your screen of your phone, it's coming out everywhere in your life. So that's the Internet of Things, at least for me. The other one is artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence has been sluggish for probably 20 years. And I really wanted to, 20 years ago, wanted to program an AI. And the technology there was very not moving. And even just to understand when people were speaking, recognize voice, 20 years ago was very, very bad. Something happened it was existing a long time ago. We had something called neural networks, and the theory was there, but the technology and the ability of doing it was not possible. But Google and other big companies suddenly were able to get all their computers and server farms and create neural networks. And with those neural networks and deep learning, we got artificial intelligence that suddenly jumped from academia to being practical in real life. We have now AIs, and we talk a lot about AIs, and this domain is accelerating really, really fast. So today, what they do is basically they can recognize pictures, they can understand your voice, and they can translate a number of things. They're still a little bit limited, but this is accelerating really fast. And one of the big acceleration that's happening right now is that those big companies like Google and Microsoft and Facebook, they're actually opening up. you can now actually, like TensorFlow from Google, you can actually download and install and create your own AIs. So this is going to accelerate the development of artificial intelligence even faster than it is going now. Virtual reality, well, I'm not going to go too far into this one. You know what it is. And I'm going to jump directly to augmented reality. So augmented reality is a way of augmenting your existing world. So it could be, in general, it's head-mounted display. So even Google Glasses could be considered augmented reality. And it overlay informations in your peripheral visions or through your cell phone or tablet. So you could see things in the real world, and it overlay over the real world some element. Okay? It's just display, and it's not very intelligent about where to put those elements. This is useful. There's a few devices that does augmented reality, and it's used in industries. It's used inside Pokemon Go, and those are devices that does that really well. And some are stereo glasses, like the ODG. Here's how those devices looks like today. So those are for augmented reality, and they will let you see things. You put those devices on, and suddenly there's things that appear all around you. Now, mixed reality. So mixed reality is a little bit like augmented reality, but you add one more thing to it. And it's about mixing the two. Augmented reality just displays things, overlay on the world, but the mixed reality is going to understand the world you're in. It's going to read the world and scan it for you. What a device can be called augmented reality, mixed reality, sorry, when it sees and understands the world. It knows where you are all the time in the real world, and it knows where you're looking at, and also it has the ability to project information on the world you're in. So it's really a mix of the two. And the key component is really knowing the positioning of your head and where your head is looking at and where you're at. Because at that point, if the device knows how the world looks like by scanning it and knows where you're looking at, it can actually put an object somewhere, and that object will stick there. So here's some of the technology that translate what I just said. So SLAM is about those technology that scan the world and record them. Stereo head-mounted display, so to see the world in 3D, so you can project with depth an object. And for sure, you want to interact with it, so you can talk or do gestures with the device. So there's an interesting thing with mixed reality, is it goes into, there's two ways of doing it. There's the way with the glasses, and you see through the real world. But there's another way of doing it, is you scan the real world, and you import it into a VR headset. So we did some experiment with the Project Tango with that, and it works also really well, because at that point, as the device knows where you are in space, and it has scanned the real world, if I touch this object, even if I'm on totally virtual headset and I'm blind, it will still be there, and I'll be able to touch it and feel it. But I will see something totally different. So that's a way of doing it. You scan the real world, and you integrate it into a virtual headset. The most common way of doing it, and the most impressive way, and that's how we do it with it's done with the Hololens and other devices like the Meta. You project, and the device scans the world and project on it those holograms. So here's the two headsets, the Meta and the Hololens. And this is something I wanted to add here, is that we're going to show, hopefully I'll be able to run the video, so I'll be able to show you some demos. But you've seen also maybe already some of them. And you can see that there's a lot of improvement that are happening. So if you see those devices and you try them today, what you see is just the beginning, okay? What's happening is that we have more technology that are coming, like light field, better eye tracking, and object recognition that can make those devices much more transparent and make those holograms much more realistic. So let's come back to that now. We have a briefing on each of those. What's the next big thing? So I don't know what the next big thing is, and it's going to be really hard to predict. I would just probably assume and guess something. So right now, the device that looks the most promising for us, it's the HoloLens. We've been working with it for a few months, and based on our past experience, we realized that that device gets really close to it. So I'm going to dig a little bit more into that and what the HoloLens can do. Here's some of the industry where mixed reality is going to have an impact. And this is the most common use case in enterprise today. So people are using augmented reality and mixed reality already in big companies. And this is what they're using it for. So one of the use cases is simply 3D visualization. And that's really practical. When you're designing something on a 2D screen, sometimes you can print it. But if you want to see something at scale, really big, and see all the dimensions, it's much better to be able to just project it with a virtual or a mixed reality headset and collaborate with it with other people. The step-by-step instructions and remote assistance are so widely used, and mainly today with augmented reality headsets. So where does that leave us as consumer? So today, as consumer, we're probably around here. We're with virtual reality is pretty mature. We have great device now we can use. They're ready, they're for the consumer. So we're finally standing up, and we're finally getting to the next level of freedom. But the ultimate freedom will be when we're untethered, when we won't have we will be able to see the real world, not blind, and the world we are in will be there. So at that point, that's the future I'm really excited about, because that's where we go back to being humans again. And we're free from those little devices where we stay sitting down all day, and flat screens and little keyboards and flat little touch like this. We're finally going to be able to merge our entire, everything we do with those computers, our social, our work days will be back and merged in our world, and we can finally stand up again, start moving, and do exactly those things in a much more human way. So we were thinking about that about 2 years ago when we're seeing all those convergence happening, and we started doing our own work, and we created our own setup. And all our research was, how are we going to do for the usability? How are we going to make, because everything today on the computers and the machines is flat. Everything is, and all the, if you think about it, it's 30 years of work in user experience on flat one dimension 2D. Now we have to redesign everything in 3D. So that raised a lot of questions, so we started doing a lot of experiments on this. And those are some of those. And those are also demos you can see at our booth here. And the biggest one and the most interesting one for me is the holographic user interface research we've done. And as we started before there was any device, okay, I'm going to try that. Before there was not any device, we created our own device. So we created our own setup with a transparent screen and infrared trackers and a 3D projector, and we could project holograms with this. And we had to recreate all the components needed for mixed reality. So for that, we had to synchronize the real world and the tracking of the person. And we're spending way too much time working on that device and making just the device work and not getting into our research. So we stopped doing that as soon as we got to try the HoloLens about a year ago. And when we tried the HoloLens, we said that's the device. That's the device we want to use, because for us that was like a breakthrough. It was the first time where we could put an hologram somewhere, and it will actually stay there. And for us, I've been working like for months trying to figure out how to make that work properly, without latency, without jiggery. It was really hard, and we saw that working for the first time. We said, oh, those guys nailed it. So we fell in love for the device, and since then we've been working with it. These are the key features of the HoloLens. And it has a very good, so how we can make those holograms stay where they are, which is the difficult part. It has a very good SLAM technology, which means it's scanning the real world really well. And at that point, it's able also to synchronize back your position. It's untethered, so you can move around freely, and you don't have a cable behind you like the Vive. It also has a pretty good display. The quality of it, it's very crisp. You can read text very easily. The field of view is probably too small for consumers, and you'll have like that, kind of like square in front of you, and all the peripheral is not displayed. Another key feature that was a great surprise for us is the audio. The way the audio works and the quality of it is great, and it's in space in the sense that if you move around, you see the audio based on where it is physically in the world. As the device knows where to put things, it also knows where to emit sound from. And that creates an amazing experience. So those are some of our mixed reality demos. And I have some videos I would love to show that video. The first demo we created was the restaurant experience. And that has an history for me. Because before we got the HoloLens, we're always imagining I will be and trying to imagine the world and different use cases. And one of that was, okay, I walk in the street and I go to restaurants, I arrive in the restaurant. How do we imagine that sequence if we were everyone were wearing those devices? And one of them was about, okay, well, instead of seeing a menu, we just see the plates, because there's no other way of, there's no need for a menu. And we could just swap the different plates, compose the plate we want by removing some element out of it and putting some more into it, or eventually ordering directly there and interacting with the waiter. So let me see what I have. Yeah, that's next. So all those are videos. So I'm going to attempt again to display them and see if that works, especially that one. Haha. Okay. So that's the restaurant experience. Let me see if this do. Can you guys see it? Okay, cool. I got the video working. So basically, what's going to happen here is you see me wearing the HoloLens, and then you see what I'm seeing. And that's the plate that's in front of me. And I'm going to just talk to it and say next plate, and that plate's going to change to something else. Eventually, at one point, I'll be able to also customize it and customize that restaurant. You can see on the, so people look really weird with those devices because they see things that you, as a normal user, don't see if you don't have the device. So if you see people doing things like this, it's disturbing. And they're, totally out of their world. So one more thing I'm going to show in that video is something related to the Internet of Things. I talked previously how important Internet of Things was for that convergence. We have connected the HoloLens with the U-Lights, which is connected lights. And after I've composed my sushi plate, here, I'll be changing the color of the light. I want to change the mood in the restaurant I'm in, because I don't like the color of the light. So you'll see me looking with my little cursor. I'm going to point the cursor to the light, tap in the air with my finger, open an interface, and that will actually change physically the light in the room. So we have that U-Light demo also at our booth, if you want to see it. And here's my order just arrived. I can start eating my sushis. Cool. So now that we have the video working, I would like to show you our original display, because I think it's worth it to understand, see that you don't need millions of dollars to actually create holograms. If you want to see hologram, you can do it yourself for about, it's still expensive setup because it's a projector that costs $1,000. And that semi-transparent screen is actually expensive. It's about $500 to create that plastic. But that's how it looks like. And with this, we were able to project on our background element. And those visuals are here. And we had pretty good tracking. But like I said, the tracking and the space scanning is one of the most difficult things to do in our own custom setups. So that was an experiment we did in our research to see what was the best way of seeing when you overlay and you add informations on elements. Sometimes it can get really crowded. You see there's all those information there. So we're experimenting to see if we were using a looking glass instead of having them popping up like this. It would not be a better way of actually interacting and overlaying information. So here's the looking glass example. So that was an example we were trying to test. So what was really great with our setup is that we were able to easily get users to play with it and interact. For the user testing was really easy. They just had to put a cap and 3D glasses, and they were all set up and seeing the experience. Cool. I'm going to show you one other demo, and that's the demo we have here also, and it's about the spatial audio. And then I'll get back again to the HoloLens. So I filmed that just before the opening this morning. And that's where we did that demo for sorry, the logo is there. I'm not sure I have the right to use that though. So we did that demo for the Los Angeles Philharmonic. And the idea there was to show how the music and the space in audio works. And you can see we have all those instruments in space, and we call it the mixer. So basically, I put the instruments, and I walk around. And by walking around, it changed the dynamic of the sound. So if I get closer to an instrument, I hear it louder. And I get further away of it, it gets dimmer. With that, I can actually mix the music just by walking. I walk where I want to listen more voice, to listen more chords, to listen more of the trombone. And then if I don't like the circle I create, I can rearrange the instruments in different places in space, put them above me, put them at the bottom, and I still continue mixing by just moving. So I like that example because for me it shows back to that slide where this guy starts standing up again. Finally, I can mix music. Instead of sitting down into my computer with Logic Pro, I mix music by walking around and moving my well, yeah, sure. I do those weird things with my hands, but at least I'm back at being a human and being standing up and not with sitting down at a desk. So that's for the music demo. Let me go back to the slide. That's a little game we have. I'm gonna skip it. Oh, I want to show you that because if you guys all of you may not have tried the HoloLens. So I have a little recording of what it looks like inside the HoloLens when you use them normally. So there's this really cool feature. Oops, I hope it's not too shaky. Okay, so when you get the HoloLens, by default, there's an operating system in there. And with that operating system comes all those little holograms, like this little girl, this little dancer, and a photo gallery app, for example. And with that photo gallery app, you can take any of the pictures, and they become standalone, and you can map them into the wall. So you can redecorate rooms. The web browser works great. As the screens are narrow, and the field of view is very narrow, but it's very crisp. So if you want to read, it's very comfortable to read with those devices. So usually, very easily, you would load up different browsers when you work at the office and use them as extended display. Were you guys here for the meta demo? Who was here for the meta demo? Cool. So yeah, I confirmed that on that demo that was actually awesome. Very courageous and really great. And I would also confirm that the display of using multiple screen is actually really a good practical use with those devices in terms of display space. So yeah, you have all those little holograms in there that you can try and play with, and they're all filmed and they're actually animated and they dance. So that's how it looks like in there. Sorry about the shakiness. I didn't remember to be shaky that much. And so yeah, I'm going to stop with this. If you take this concept that those devices, today you've seen them, they're pretty bulky. You don't want to wear that in the street, maybe at work in some circumstances, but even then it's a little bit like impressive. But if you take into account that those display is going to reduce in size by 30 to 50% every year, it's very likely that in a few years, really shortly, we'll get them really small. And if you take into account the fact that the pricing is going to go down in those technology as well, we will soon have those devices to close to size of regular glasses. And at that point, it's a great case for actually ditching your phone, because imagine that everything you're doing on your phone now can actually be done with much more extended display. Even if we, there's a few companies actually that are doing that. They're actually taking those flat applications like Twitter and all, and put them back into the HoloLens or the Vive, and then you can actually reuse them directly in there as a transition until we actually rethink all that user experience that we've done on flat into a 3D user experience. Just imagine how Twitter would look like in 3D. So I think we're at birth of a really new way we're going to interact with the machine as humans. It's going to change radically and in a way that I think is very positive. Even if there's a lot of fear about the fact that we have information overload, now the information will be on your glasses. Remember, you can still remove them, okay? You don't have to keep them all the time. And I think that's all from me. I'm going to open up for questions. And I'm done. Thank you. Yes?
Thanks. I'm also very impressed with the HoloLens. I think it's a great device. One thing that I've noticed that I think it could really help it along would be better gestures and more gestures. Do you know if there are other gestures available that haven't really been integrated into apps yet, or if there are new gestures coming down the road soon?
So they're very... Okay, if you ask them the question at Microsoft, they're going to say, the gesture is this. And you ask them, more gesture? No, the gesture is this. The reality, when you look into the SDK, you can see that the commands, and there's more gesture. They're not enabled or they're not there. And one of the things we came to appreciate with that single gesture, and I'm going to admit, it's really not the most practical one. When we do a lot of demos, if you're not used to it, people have a really hard time figuring that for the first time. It takes like, I'll say really literally a few minutes for them to figure it out. Okay, now I got it. When you got it, it's easy, it works. What we got to appreciate with that gesture now, and that's very useful, I think for a first version of the device, it's great to have it because it's a very simple paradigm that we already know. You look with your gaze and you have a little pointer, and then this is called air tap, so it's a click. So we reproduce what we have on our phone and our computer in a 3D concept. We used to do setups, and I didn't show it to you guys, but we had a setup where we're using the lip motion. And with that setup, it was really, we had a lot of gesture, and we were totally free on gestures. And we realized that people were really confused with gesture, and explaining them the gesture took forever. And either they were not doing it right, or they were forgetting the gesture. They were having a hard time remembering exactly what was the gesture again. So making natural gesture that works all the time, I think it's a lot of work, and I think starting with just one is a good way, but I'm 100% sure that there will be more gestures.
You said the Leap has more gestures?
No, not the Leap. I don't not say anything about the Leap. The Meta has more gesture. Meta 2 has more gestures. Any other question? Oh, over there.
Thank you. This has more to do with the fact that the HoloLens is extremely kind of like a walled garden with the UWP way of programming, and there's been some concern regarding, from a development standpoint, when we're developing apps, it's going to get forced through the Windows Store. Do you foresee, with your experience with the HoloLens, any potential problems with that in terms of what the API is offering and how that might restrict developers from being able to bring in things such as their own custom hardware or things like that?
So first, the current development tools are Unity-based. Now with the platform, yes, it's true. We started encountering that when we tried to use third-party libraries that were designed for general Windows or designed for other device, did not necessarily always compile for Windows Universal. But I think the product is compelling enough that people will make an effort to compile some of those libraries, and we're looking forward for that. In terms of the fact that it's Unity and they've started with Unity, I think it's a great way of starting because a lot of developers know how to use Unity today. And they've created this really good abstract level for libraries for managing the gaze, managing the spatial, managing, like you have an object, pretty much everything's all abstract. For us, that came on the background where we tried to bootstrap everything ourselves. That was like a given. It was so easy to get started and get things moving in there. So and from what I know, they're working a lot in improving those tools. They have increased the team significantly for improving those tools. So I think for the developer, they've been so far fairly friendly, and I really expect that's going to keep improving as it is.
Thank you.
Cool. Oh, one over there.
Hi there, Greg Panos here. Question, SIGCHI and other professional user group organizations have been talking about standardization of gestures, for years. And I know there have been studies that have been done to try to determine which are the ones that would have the highest degree of adoption or uptake per se as the devices evolved to be able to be gesture controlled. So have you been looking at any of the studies to determine the common modes that seem to be have the path of least resistance for a larger uptake or adoption? Or are you planning on building any applications where people can experiment and you can aggregate data about their behaviors to help guide the decisions on which kinds of gestures that you can make into a core group that would be resident on a particular platform?
So, like the previous question just mentioned, today the system is pretty locked in the gesture, the end gesture we can do. There's only one, and until that's unlocked, there's no way for us to really experiment on those end gestures. After we're experimenting and we're looking in studies related to other type of interactions, especially gaze-related interactions, movement interactions, and for those that give us much more other room for interacting, that are much more intuitive sometimes, and audio. There's really one thing that's really powerful today is the speech recognition that's improving. There's a lot of the interaction we do just with audio by talking to the device. And that's pretty working well out of the box, surprisingly even when the device is offline. You can just say a sentence and we'll recognize it and interact with it. So we didn't look into end gesture much because we're locked, but as soon as that gets unlocked, we're probably going to explore as well, what are the other gestures and which one would work best. It's also very interesting to see users with the device because there's all those research, but when you see the users with the device and putting it and showing them an hologram, almost half the time, if not more, the first thing they do is try to touch the hologram. or point to it and try to put the finger on it. It's this compelling reactions to having something physical and having it here. And that sometimes throws away a lot of those theories on gestures that we were thinking of. And so I think there's going to be also a lot of user testing and new research around gesture, just because what the devices are actually enabling today. Cool. All set. Thank you very much.